Everybody, welcome back to the Apply Rigor podcast. We're so excited that you've joined us today. First of all, I want to welcome my good buddy, Dave Jones. Dave, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Abundantly blessed and walk in the favor of God. That's where I'm at today.
Hey, man, that's a good walk.
It's where I'm at.
Hey, as we get going today, we're so excited. We've been blessed beyond measure through this podcast to be able to link up with some amazing leaders. And
Yes.
before we get in with our guest today, first of all, I want to thank you for those of you that are downloading. We're getting more downloads than we ever thought we would get. We're seeing our subscription rate go up. The comments and ratings have been awesome. And so what we're beginning to figure out here is that this is resonating with you. And so if you haven't done that, today is your day. Go subscribe, go rate it, and let us continue to be able to give you great content that will add value to you and your organization. So today, I am really excited as we think about all the great leaders that we've had thus far. Today is no different. Today, we have with us Shelly Henderson. She just put out a fantastic new book. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you, Dave, go ahead and give us a little bit of info on Shelly, and then let's dive in.
So super excited to have you here today, Shelly. I'm going to read your bio here in a second. I actually read your book last night. I couldn't put it down. It's a easy, thought-provoking read. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. I'm going to read your bio here. You were born in Detroit, Michigan. Shelly has called Charlotte home for 44 years after graduating from Appalachian State with a degree in elementary education. Spent a year on the LPGA Futures Tour pursuing a professional golf career before transitioning to her current role at Henderson Properties. I can't wait to talk to you about that. As co-founder of Henderson Properties, along with her husband Phil, Shelly manages the company's corporate culture and branding, along with the company's leadership development courses for employees. For Shelly, achieving her dream of starting a business meant giving up her role as a stay-at-home mom and embarking on a new path of chaos and unpredictability. In her book, Starting from Scratch, A Woman's Pursuit of Family Business and the American Dream, Shelly tells her story of how she and her husband, Phil, gave up everything to chase their entrepreneur ambitions and open Henderson Properties. It is an honor to have you here today, Shelly.
All right.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
So first question, we're talking about the Apply Rigor, the peaks and the valleys. I read your book, lots of valleys and, lots of some cool peaks. But, when you think about your journey and your book, what was the highest high and the lowest low? Let's start with your biggest peak that you've achieved with your entrepreneur career.
You know what? So I have to say that the biggest peak has to date been just what you said, the release of my book, because it was such a dream come true. As a former teacher, I love to inspire and empower people. And about 5 years ago, when my oldest child was going off to college, I really at that point thought that my life was over as a mom. And I'm sure if you have any moms watching this morning, they feel my pain. And because my life was just so tied up with raising kids and helping with the business, and I sort of, for a little bit, lost my identity as a person. And so I thought I wanted to write about that and inspire people, especially women, to know that just because, and I say that lightly, they were a stay-at-home mom, that doesn't mean that they have nothing to offer. In fact, they have a skill set that is beyond measure that any employer would love to see on a resume. So, Phil, my husband, said, you've been talking about this for a while. Why don't you do it? I said, okay, I'm going to do it. So I actually had the wherewithal and the want to make that happen. Did I have a publisher? No. Did I have an outline? No. But I'm proof positive that you can do what you set your mind to do. So I found the people that would help me, and fast forward a couple years later, wrote the book, and it was published in June.
Wow, awesome. Congratulations.
I love
Thank
that.
you.
There's so many great nuggets here. The first question, and I knew I was going to be interviewing you this morning. You talk about this want to. You had the want to on mom life to entrepreneur life. We had the want to. What does that mean?
Well, for everybody, it looks differently, but for me, I just had the want to be able to prove that at any age and at any stage in life, You can have goals, you can meet goals. Just because your life changes, you may have a death in the family, you may have a child leaving for college, you may find yourself married for 20 plus years and say, now what? What do we do? And I have found that what I thought was true and my life was going to be boring and over because I had no kids at home, it has been quite the opposite. And I've actually found new ways to empower myself and my marriage, my business, and take it to the next level.
So you said something when you were describing this book writing process in the beginning that I want to take a second and lean into.
Yeah.
So you talked about this idea of identity, and when your child went off to college, of trying to look yourself in the mirror and really figure out what is my identity. So when we think about life's transition, whether it's to a new job or it is, your kids leaving home or whatever, what's the best way to grab on, first of all, establish a healthy identity and then hold on to it through times of transition?
Well, okay, I'm going to give you an example. On social media right now, I'm seeing a lot of things because it was summertime, about parents saying, make the summer count. You only have 18 summers with your children. I don't believe that to be true. My children are now 23 and 20, and we have the best family vacations. They want to go on vacation because we've made it a tradition. We've made it family oriented. We've let them help in the planning of some of our vacations so that they own it. So I feel like if people are in that transition, make it your own and start a new tradition. Or maybe you did something years ago and it's time to put it back in the forefront for your family or for yourself. Or maybe, maybe there's something that you've been wanting to try. You wanted to start exercising. You want to start a little business of your own. You want to take a trip. Don't procrastinate. Don't procrastinate. Make it happen.
That's good.
Awesome. So let's talk about your deepest valley. I mean, there's lots of valleys in here as a mom, and
Right.
gosh, running a business and starting a business with young kids, and like you relate to so many women out there that like if they read this book, it's like, man, I could just see the stress coming off them as a kind of well, not kind of, they're just going to resonate with what you went through.
Yeah,
But talk to us
I
about.
just tried so hard
Yeah.
to keep it real
Yeah.
because in so many times in today's society, again, with social media, people want to paint this perfect picture
Mm.
of life and their kids. And I'm a mom of all boys, and trust me, I love that. I would have taken two more boys if the good Lord had seen fit, but it has its challenges. And when people ask me what my valley has been in life, I always go back to August of 2002. 6 months prior, I was sitting in church and the sermon was about the storms in your life. And at that particular time, I had a almost 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, well, this is a great sermon, but I don't have any storms in my life. Life is really good. And I appreciated that fact. I was fairly humble in that statement, but I was a lot younger and probably more naive. So I'm not sure I really got it. But fast forward 6 months to August of 2002, and I got a storm, and our oldest son was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic.
Mm.
And 16 years ago, that was way different than it is now. Grocery trips were the equivalent of a 3-hour trip because at that particular time, there weren't any low carb foods. There were sugar-free foods, but my grocery trips began as like a learning curve, reading labels, looking at foods. We thought Raisin Bran, for example, was a great cereal. It is good, but it has a lot of carbs. If you're a type 1 insulin dependent person, you can't have all the carbs and the sugar. So it was all a balancing act. And plus, our business was still so new. So we had employee situations, we had new accounts. And on top of that, the school that Blake was at, he had just started second grade that particular week. And they weren't as, you know, knowledgeable on the subject. And so I was asked to come in every day to administer his insulin because it was so new to Blake that he couldn't do it at that time. So at that point, I not only had what I call the storm, but it was a hurricane because my whole life shuffled. And as a mom, that's what happens. You know, Phil, he was very supportive, but somebody had to stay at the office full time.
Mm-hmm.
So my role sort of shifted and I had to find that balance. And it was a deep valley. It was a very deep valley because I had to learn right then that bad things happen to good people, and it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. And I would like to encourage people that in that aspect today, that we all have challenges and valleys in our life, but it's what we do with it that makes it count.
So it's interesting because that's a valley that is not going to go away tomorrow. I mean, for some of our listeners, they're in valleys and they're like, man, if I just get that one phone call tomorrow, or if that one deal goes through tomorrow, or if this thing gets reversed tomorrow, we'll be good to go. Your valley is something that starts that day in 2002 and goes on for a long time. So then with that in mind, what do you do? You know, I mean, how do you have a good attitude? How do you pick yourself up? Heck, we've defined hope as a belief that change is possible.
Yeah.
In this example, where do you find that? Where do you find hope? What do you do?
You know what, guys, that is a great question because I distinctly remember driving down the road several times a few months later, and I actually had the thought of how dare these people go on with their life and their day when I am suffering and I don't know how to particularly care for my child. In a type 1 diabetic, it's kind of like I say riding a seesaw by yourself because there is no balance and different things can affect your life. Diet, exercise. My son, who still is, he was an avid, wonderful hockey player. He's a fabulous football player. He went to college to play football. So all these things were starting to happen, and not to mention that he had just turned 7. And you know, when you're a child, you need good things in your diet to help you grow and prosper. So what I ended up doing, and it might sound a little cliche, but a friend of mine said, who just had a strong Christian background, said, you know what, Shelly, you have to accept it, and you can't move forward unless you accept what's happened to you.
Wow.
So that was step number one. I accepted it, and we embraced it as our family thing. Even little brother took a stance in it, and even though he was only 4 at the time, he was very educated. We didn't hide anything. We were very open, very honest. Blake required quarterly endocrinologist appointments. So, you know, we celebrated the good appointments and learned from the not so good appointments. But yeah, it was just a journey. And he is a wonderful example today of if you take care of yourself and you do the best that you can and persevere, that you can live with a chronic illness. But I also say that because by the grace of God and by the support from his family, we have gotten him to the age of 23.
Wow. That's powerful. You know, as we land the plane here, as we close out the podcast, thanks again for being on. There's so much we could unpack. We could probably do another show for sure. Easily. I mean, we didn't really get into it a whole lot, but I just want to encourage you to pick up this book. It is well written. It is an easy read, but it's packed with so many great nuggets. You know, I could just feel your heartbeat in this, honestly, Shelly. Like reading, I could just feel you and understand you, where you're coming from in the world, and I think it's gonna help a lot of people out there. Not necessarily just moms either. Like the peaks and the valleys and the struggles are awesome. As we close down, I just want to ask you one question. What encouragement can you offer those entrepreneurs in the middle of a valley? Like right now, they're in their valley. What would you say to them?
You know what? I would say to them to keep plugging and just keep your eye on the next goal, because our business has survived and sustained a lot of things over the past 20 years. And owning your own business is kind of like any relationship. It ebbs and it flows. So when it's good, enjoy the ride. And when it's not so good, just learn from it and own it, we've had to admit plenty of mistakes. We're not perfect, but we've learned from it and we've moved on and grown. So I'm proud to say that we survived because of that. So hang on tight, and don't give up. Don't give up. Too many people give up before they should have. And there's been plenty of times when we wanted to throw in the towel and we didn't. And Dave, I'd like to say one thing. If people can go to the book website, thebookstartingfromscratch.com.
Okay.
And the first person that goes to the website and contacts us, I'll be glad to send them a book for free.
Oh, awesome.
That's really cool.
That's a blessing. That's great.
Yeah.
I bet you I can get there faster than you can.
I already got mine,
okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for your time,
Thank you.
Shelly.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think as we close it down today, I love that one big idea we kind of landed on, that when you are in the valley, the first step is to accept it and embrace it. Until you do that, you cannot move forward. You cannot start back up to your next peak. And so take that with you today. That's the first step. So if you're there, you got to do that. It's painful. It's humiliating sometimes. There's feel of sometimes even guilt and shame, but you got to grab it. You got to put your arms around it. And so, Dave, please, man, can you read this great Winston Churchill quote that we love to end this show with?
All right,
because
here we
it
go.
really gives us the idea.
Success is never final, and failure is never fatal. It's your courage through both that counts.
Man, I love that.
I love it.
All right, everybody. You've heard from us. You heard from Shelly. Have a great day. And, hey, go apply some rigor.
All right.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Shelly. See ya.
Thanks. Bye.
All right.